Welcome back to Rappahannock Issues. I'm Tom Cohen with David Kerr and our power panel of Dr. Farnsworth and Dr. Condit. And we're moving from state to national. And so we have a presidential election coming up in 2016, primary in Virginia early next year. So, gosh, is there anything going on in the presidential election right now?
Just a few things.
All right, have at it.
Well, I think it's actually really, as a political scientist, you know, this is like our field day time. But interestingly enough, this is the time when the country is really not paying as much attention. We have all kinds of punditry and news media, and they're making money selling, you know, products off the debates. But the truth is, most Americans really are not tuned out yet and not thinking about what they're going to be doing when they come closer to the primaries and caucuses. Having said that, it's certainly an interesting sideshow.
Well, I think that we end up with a situation in this country where we spend far too much money, far too much attention is devoted to this primary process. And I think the problem would be dramatically reduced if we had some sort of a lottery system where we don't know which state is going first until, say, January 1 of an election year. The Canadians just finished an election, and they were complaining that it was almost 80 days long, okay? And you know, God love them. They thought that that was a horribly long time for an election, the longest, in fact, in Canada in more than 100 years. So the Americans, you know, we have these 4-year elections. I mean, we are all, as soon as one president is inaugurated, or if the second term, you know, re-inaugurated, then you have the start of the process going into Iowa, going into New Hampshire, states, by the way, that don't represent America, that don't look like America, that have no special claim to being first in the primary and first in the caucus, and yet there they are. Now, it's going to be pretty hard to dislodge that process, but make no mistake about it. This goes on so long because you can focus your attention on places like Iowa and New Hampshire. And if you're a candidate without any support in this country, 1% or less, you still can focus on Iowa, and all you really have to do is find a place to stay at night and a way to fill up your gas tank, and you're a candidate for president. It's just a crazy system that is really unproductive.
And I think that the parties are actually, the couple of the candidates totally recognize this. But you have begun to see some interest because Virginia is going to be a really important state in the Electoral College count. And so already you're beginning to see candidates start building grassroots organizations in the state of Virginia, candidates that you would assume are probably have a higher chance of being there in the long haul. And that's really an interesting problem because our primary comes so late, relatively speaking.
We're on what will be the Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
The superest Tuesday of them all.
Yes.
It's going to be March 1st, and it's going to involve another dozen states going off the same day, and that's going to give us some attention, to be sure. But, I mean, just compare Virginia to Iowa and New Hampshire. You know, you're looking at a state that is really much more America in miniature. Most Virginians came from somewhere else. We have a regional diversity that few states do. We have our liberal Northeast, if you will, in Northern Virginia. We have our Silicon Valley in the Dulles area. We have our heartland. We have our Deep South Christian Conservative Evangelical Tea Party community. We have our Sun Coast, of course, in Hampton Roads. Maybe we have everything but California. We're America in miniature. And if a case is to be made for one state going first, I think the case is much stronger for Virginia than it is for Iowa or New Hampshire.
David, any thoughts?
It's almost like the big elephant in the room. I'm trying to...
Or donkey?
Or donkey. No, he's not, who knows what he is. But Trump had said, let's see, this is October 20th, right? And Trump is still holding high in the polls. New Hampshire isn't that far away. Iowa caucuses before that. What if he actually scores well in New Hampshire? What happens then? He actually has viability.
Can I contest the first part of the assertion?
Yes, sir.
I just agree that Donald Trump is actually holding high in the polls. This is an argument that media and pundits keep making. And the truth is, when you have a distribution across 14, I think we're still at 14 candidates, to see that you have 26, 27% of the vote actually doesn't mean anything. It really starts meaning something when you start winnowing down those candidates. So he could well win Iowa, but that has nothing whatsoever to do with whether or not he's going to be the nominee. Because what you're going to see is after Iowa, after New Hampshire, you're going to see those candidates start to winnow themselves down. Even in Virginia, we just saw our own native son, Jim Webb, step out of the Democratic primary process. And we haven't begun to see that yet, but you've seen a couple of Republicans drop out. But until you see that, you don't really know if he's a front runner among a ginormous slate of people, and that doesn't tell you very much. His negatives among Republicans are very high, and whether or not Republicans who are currently supporting Carly Fiorina or currently supporting any of the others are going to cleave to Donald Trump, I don't think we can tell.
One of the things that I found is interesting, if you watch the two campaigns, you have really two Americas. And we're not talking the John Edwards to America. But the left, the liberals are saying they want more social programs, a new Deal. They want a bigger, stronger federal government. They want higher taxes on the people that they don't particularly feel warm and fuzzy about. And they look at Europe and they say that's what we want. And then you look at the conservatives on the right, they sit there and say, we look at Europe and no, we don't want that. We want a smaller government. We don't want big federal spending. And your wealth and your income is private property, and we don't think that you should be taking it. And you have two extremes. And the major candidates that you're talking about keep pushing further and further to the extreme. And so the question is oh, great, a year from now or 2 years from now, what ends up happening when the person wins? I mean, there's still be divided Congress. And so are Congress members, is Nancy Pelosi going to say, if a Republican wins, yes, let's wipe out Obamacare and replace it? Or is Congressman Whitman going to sit there with a Democratic president and say, no, I'm for single payer? You're not going to get really a governable country the way it's going.
Well, why would you imagine that we would? I mean, the smart money on Washington is always betting on them doing nothing. I think that when we look at the growing polarization in American elected officials, we really do see that there isn't any moderation. There isn't the opportunity to reach across party lines because there's nobody even looking to the center. If you look, and this takes us back to the question of gerrymandering. All the action is in the primary, then you are going to nominate liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans. There will be none of these conservative Democrats and moderate Republicans that we once saw in Congress. And when you have that, then it's just my way or the highway. And since neither side is going to end up with filibuster-proof majorities in the Senate or unified control of government in the foreseeable future, then you're going to have this war of inches, this trench warfare. Do we shut the government down? Do we not? Do we keep the budget going? Do we not? It's always going to be this game of inches in the foreseeable future because of this gerrymandering and because of, quite frankly, an America that itself is pretty divided.
Well, and targeting with base voting. And it would be good for you to target to come back and watch us next time on Rappahannock Issues, and then particularly on election night when we'll have live coverage and our guests will be calling in. And we hope to see you then on election night and again on Rappahannock Issues.